I think it's going to be a lot more practical. I think it doesn't mean that there's not going to be scriptures. Like everything is going to try and to be backed by scripture, but it's going to be a lot more, okay, cool. Like, how do I get started today? What do I do? A lot more like real life and practical. So please do just be ready, be prepared. I'm super excited. But as always, sorry. Cool, perfect. So yeah, the topic, of course, is budgeting, saving, and investing. You guys, of course, will know that if you've seen all the comms and the emails that have gone out, I'm sure you're aware. And just before we get started, there is, as usual, a Slido link. Ultimately, this is just for you guys to ask any questions anonymously if you want. Or honestly, guys, I just prefer to interrupt me and unmute yourself, if I'm being honest. Like I'm very, please interrupt me. But if you don't want to do that, feel free to just go on slido.com and type in the code, and then you can ask any anonymous questions there. Cool. So I want to get in. I'm going to try and finish by like 9:15 again, but yeah, oh yeah, I'll try. So agenda-wise, we just going to go for a quick recap of what we looked at last week. Just going to introduce the topic, some like early things to know about these three things. We'll do as usual. I think these small groups are actually quite handy because it just lets it be more interactive. It's less more teaching and more like us all learning together. So we'll do one of those very shortly. So we'll break it up into budgeting and saving. We'll look at the different types of budgeting. We'll look at some templates, resources, and then we'll dive into investing, which is my favorite topic. So we'll look at like a couple of need to knows, some principles of investing. We'll jump into different types of investments, and then we'll look at like specific asset classes deep dive, and then how you can kind of get started today. But as always, guys, I can't proceed unless I have like a couple of cameras on. I'm sorry, just because it makes my life easier. And I'm sure you guys don't want to be looking at, okay, cool. PA's back on. Okay, cool. All right. I can always count on you. All right. Thank you. Where's my wife? Toyin, please, can you put on your camera? Moffat, okay. The regulars, but I'm waiting for Leke. Leke's camera is normally on. And if he's not on, then I'm sure he's busy. Tabore, lovely. Not me drawing people out. I'm sorry, guys. I love you all. But I can work with this. I can work with this. So cool. Again, guys, I'm gonna be as transparent as possible. I think it's a beauty when it's just everyone being honest, I guess, and there's no hierarchy, there's no superiority. This is just everyone learning, and I'm gonna be as transparent, like I said, as possible. So again, ask me questions. Like I said, 99.9% is on the table. So please do ask, and I'll be sure to answer them. But just quickly diving into it. So recap last week, we looked at the attitudes towards money. So we kind of split it into four sections. The first section was almost looking at the dichotomy between wealth on earth and wealth in heaven. We looked at scriptures for wealth on earth being Deuteronomy 8, which says that you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth, that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your fathers as it is this day. And then we paralleled that with scriptures in Matthew 6 when it speaks about not storing up treasures for yourself. And then I guess like this balance came, we looked at First Timothy 6 when it spoke about not having a craving for the love of money. So I guess like that's how we kind of put these two together, like being able to like be wise and save on earth and invest on earth, but also not put our hope and our trust in our money, but actually put it in heaven. And then we looked at, I guess, the attitudes that the Lord wants us to have when it comes to wealth and finances. So first one is that we are stewards, like everything belongs to God, and he is the chief owner. We looked at the fact that God is an investor and that he desires a return. We looked at the fact that building wealth takes time. So we looked at all of the, like a lot of the famous companies, the Amazons, the Fords, the Etsy's, the eBays, and how long it took them to actually get to the point that they are today. And then we looked at the fact that ignorance isn't bliss, and such an amazing scripture in Proverbs 19, which says, desire without knowledge is not good, and whoever makes haste with his feet misses his way. Ultimately saying that it's great to want to do these things, but if you don't have the knowledge, it's actually pretty pointless. And then we touched on the principles. So the three principles of giving, generosity, and then saving and investing. And then the last thing that we looked at, I guess, was like why it's important to look at this now. So we looked at the fact that good old Rishi, our Prime Minister, said that we're in a recession as of, I think, a couple of weeks ago. And the fact that inflation has been like rampant high over the past couple of years and interest rates have been super high. So all of these contribute to this whole like cost of living crisis that we're seeing. But hopefully, like through what we learned today, we can kind of be a lot more prudent and a lot more diligent with how we use our money. But that's like a quick recap of what we looked at. I don't think there should be anything too surprising there. But cool. Sounds good. Sweet, getting nods. Okay, perfect. Cool. So just to dive into, I guess, the session today, I think I want to start off with just saying the fact that like nothing I say today is financial advice. Firstly, because I don't want you guys to say, "Oh, Damola said I should do this," and secondly, I don't want you guys to sue me. All right. So, listen, this year is gonna be busy enough. I don't want a lawsuit, right? But I say that to say that everything I say today is things that I've learned and more so an educational standpoint, and of course, take it with a grain of salt. And I'll always be transparent, right? But it's not, hey, do this and do that and do that, and then I'll be rich, because that's not what I'm saying. And then secondly, the fact that I know this is like a very sensitive topic, but I hope that like I'll try and give like a safe space, because I know that these things can be a bit taboo and a bit like blasé and oh, like we shouldn't speak about this. But unless we bring things to the light, right, it's never going to be, I guess, solved. So a couple of stats that I want to start off with, right? And this isn't to scare anybody, but this is more so to like understand the reality of the situation. I think firstly, and these are stats by like decently sized organizations, right? The fact that like 1 in 5 people like rarely or never save, I think it kind of shows the core to why we have to do these things, right? Like why it's amazing that ANC has this opportunity where we can speak and be like, oh, okay, cool. Like how do I save more? How do I be better? What struggles do I have? And like how do we kind of overcome those? The second thing is, and this one shocks me, well, didn't shock me, but it's like 81%, which is 4 in 5 people avoid discussing their finances with someone. And I can only assume that this means spouse as well, right? Which is insane, because it's like the two become one, and it's like, surely if you become one, your finances become one, but I don't want to rustle any feathers, right? But like the fact that people don't speak about this also is a part as to why I want to be as transparent and as open as possible. The third thing is about half of people don't feel confident about making decisions about financial products and services. And this is so interesting because like these things are thrown in your face every single day. Like you can't even go to JD Sports and try and buy a pair of shoes without having buy now, pay later, or like a credit card or this or that. And it's like, yo, like I just want to buy my shoes, all right? So I think the fact that a lot of people don't feel comfortable about like products and services and like investing and even pensions, right? Like it does kind of show that the part of this is breaking that stigma down around finances. And then the last one is about 61% of people don't focus on the long term when it comes to money. And I think this one's probably the like the biggest, I guess, red flag, because again, last week I said that there was a quote that I heard, and it said that we have to be willing to plant trees under whose shade we will never sit. Ultimately saying that we need to be able to do things in our lives today that actually makes the next generation better. Like our kids and our kids' kids and our children's children's children. And I think everything around money kind of boils down to how we think about it long term. So again, these are kind of just like the core tenets of why I think it's important for us to be having these conversations now. But as always, I want to kind of start with a small group exercise. Again, it's less. You told me that Bitcoin would do well, bro. So, I want to start with a quick exercise. I think just again, it probably is not. I think it's probably not going to be 10 minutes, but I guess like we did last week, I think it's good to understand where we're coming from so that everything we learn today is okay, cool. I know where I am. I know where I want to get to, and this is how I bridge the gap. So ultimately, I just want to quickly go into small groups and just answer these couple of questions. First question is, how comfortable today do you feel budgeting, saving, and or investing? Like it doesn't have to be all three, but I mean, pick one, pick two. If you are comfortable, like how did you get there? And if you're not comfortable, like what hinders you from doing these things? Does that make sense?
We spoke more about the foundation of our sort of financial knowledge and understanding of what it means to save and budget and invest. and just sort of shared our starting points financially and obstacles. And I think Bim definitely dropped some wisdom in that, due to working in the financial industry. She's seen the way big companies approach things. So like, I think she mentioned two things about money needing to attach value and a reason to money, unless it will just squander by itself, and just sort of having to pursue the knowledge because the knowledge won't come to you, kind of thing. But yeah, we generally spoke about those things.
So good. That's so really good. That's really, really good. And then one more person, if anyone wants to go.
I'll go
for it. Oh, sorry, Hillary. I was in your group and you said something so funny in the comments. I can't remember what you said about investing, but I'll tell you.
You know me, when I say things, I forget it instantly. But what's it called? Oh, I said, investing, volunteering your money just for it, knowing it can go. What's it called? In our group, we were all mainly like, so we all consistently talked about being comfortable to an extent with saving, like just knowing when to put aside money. But the big things that we came out with is that nobody was really confident about investing. That was definitely the scariest area. And then when it came to budgeting, a few of us were like, yeah, we know how to budget, but we don't always follow that budget. And some of us were like, we've heard of budgeting, but I don't even know where to begin. Like, is budgeting tracking what you spend, or is it predicting what you will spend and trying to stick to that? So we definitely had a range of conversations, and I definitely do get the sense that investing is probably the scariest area. The maintenance of budgeting is the area that I think is a big area to sort of learn and find techniques on, but saving varies based off of people's backgrounds too.
No, that's amazing. That's so good. And I think it's super helpful knowing, I guess, where to spend, I guess, the bulk of this time. Yeah. So I think this is super helpful, guys. And yeah, I hope you found that useful. And like Moffat said, man, we all in this together, right? So I think it's so powerful that we can all learn together and share our own experiences. But cool. So I guess just a quick one, right? So I'm gonna kind of whiz through this stuff, right? But this is a chart, right, that ultimately shows the deposits of savings over time in the UK. And you'll probably notice like a couple of spikes here, right? In, I guess, like end of 2019, start of 2020, but also middle of 2020. And there was one main thing that happened, right? And everyone knows that it was COVID, right? Now, the reason why I say this is because what this chart tells me is that people don't have a problem with saving. This is what it tells me. Because what we see is that when there's a pandemic and things are closed, if people are able to save then, it means that they're able to do it now. It's just a matter of discipline and vision, right? Now there's a quote that I love, guys. Like, I don't know if you remember like tidbits of like information in like secondary school and primary school, right? But there's this quote that's stuck with me forever. And it says that the necessity of needing to do something is the mother of invention. Ultimately meaning that if you need to do something, you will find a way to do that thing. Like, it's by a lady called Esther Bozera. Like, she's like, honestly, it stuck with me. I didn't pay attention in geography, but the one thing I did come out with thingy was the quote that will stay with me for the rest of my life, right? And what this tells me is that when you need to do something, because there was COVID and there was a need for us to stay at home, it meant that you had to save. Like, you couldn't go to Nando's. You couldn't, or unless they done eat out to help out, which is a terrible thing, right? But unless they done that, right? Like, you had nowhere to go. You were in your house, right? So I think the point being is that it's possible because the data has shown that, right? It's just a matter of vision and discipline. And hopefully in the next like 45 minutes, we can kind of run through all of the factors that will like kind of help everyone here. So just really quickly, as everyone knows, right, budgeting is just simply a plan for how you spend your money. Like, it's just part and parcel. It's period. Like, it basically says, how will I spend the money that I've been paid this month over the next month, right? And the reason why it's so important is because, remember last week we spoke about the fact that God is the chief owner. He owns everything. And because he owns everything, it means that we have to be stewards, right? All budgeting is a way that we do stewardship. It's the way that we are prudent. It's the way that we are able to be the people that God has called here to be on earth, right? Because if everything belongs to him and we're called stewards, it's like, okay, cool. Like, the bridge between doing what God said and us being stewards can be an example of budgeting, right? Now, it's always connoted with like negativity, like budgeting, the word doesn't sound fun. It doesn't sound exciting. It's not something that gingers your spirit, like, oh, like I'm gonna budget today, right? It's a bit boring, it's a bit mundane, right? But honestly, like I think the point of starting with attitudes is so that this can be almost a trigger to why we start to do some of the things that we do, right? Now, if you look at, again, it's going to be also very scripturally heavy, right? Proverbs 21:20, it says, there is a precious treasure and oil in the house of the wise who prepares for the future, but a short-sighted and foolish man swallows it up and wastes it. Now, in the NIV, it says something pretty interesting. It says the wise store up choice food and olive oil, meaning that the only way that you're able to store up a choice of something is if you've prepared or planned for it beforehand, right? Now, this is the point behind budgeting. A wise man is one who prepares for the future, and a wise man is one who has oil in his house. The only way you have oil is if you prepared for it, right? Luke 16:11 says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? Again, guys, I'm not going to hold on to this too much because I think I've done that last week and already at the start of this session, right? But ultimately, there's a call for us to handle that which we have well, right? Now, if we go a bit more practical, what are the different types of budgeting? Now, I think it's so important to know this, right? Because different types of budgets will serve you in different seasons. And as we go through this, I'll kind of show you how my budgeting has changed over time. But ultimately, I think it's good to know that there probably isn't one type of budget that will serve you for the rest of your life in every season, right? Now, my personal favorite is a zero-based budgeting. This is what Tony and I do. It basically just says that every single penny that we get paid has a designated home. So once we get paid on the first, by the third or the fourth, the account balance goes back to zero, right? Second type, which I don't like personally, is something called a 50-30-20 rule, which means that you spend 50% of your income on necessities like rent, transportation, all that stuff, 30% on, I think it's wants, and then 20% on needs. No, sorry. 30% on wants, 20% on savings. And that for me just seems backwards, but people use it and I think it's fine, but I personally just don't like it. And then the third type of budget in it is a goals-based budget. And this is the kind of budget that's like, okay, cool. Like I have a goal to buy a new car or to go on holiday or to get married. So I'm going to just save towards that. Like it's a bit loose, but it's still good to have some kind of goals, right? But there are a bunch of different budgets, right? There's a spending cap, there's an envelope, there's a pay yourself first, but I don't want to go into too much of those because there's just so much there. But the point being is that there are a number of different budgets. And Emmanuel, thank you. Zero is the one. Like you're my kind of guy, man. You're my kind of guy. But cool. So I guess that's like a high level type of budgeting, and the different things that you guys could potentially use. I've put the link here if you want to kind of research a bit more into what each of those different budgets are and what they do. Now, the reason I said that we like a zero-based budgeting is because every town has an allocated pot, and it's handy because it helps you avoid frivolous spending. So if I see that the account's gone back to zero, it's very unwise of me to go and take money out of groceries to go and buy a new pair of New Balance 906s because I really want them. I haven't got them yet. And even being fully transparent, right? Like this is how I budgeted at home. And just before I show you how I did, I wanted to bring the scripture here, which says, don't let the excitement of your youth cause you to forget your creator. Now, I put this here because I think living at home is one of the biggest luxuries that anybody here will have. Like any person who's moved out and is paying rent and is paying bills, can every person who doesn't live at home just be like, yo, like living outside of home is it can be the ghetto. See, everyone's saying it, right? Living without your parents is It's hard. So it is probably the most luxurious time in terms of your wealth building power to have at home, right? Now I'll show you exactly what I mean, right? So this was my budget, pre-marriage, pre-home, and pre-wedding, right? And I just grouped it for simplicity's sake. So I kind of put about 20% of my income away for like giving an emergency fund. I'll dive into emergency fund after. But again, fundamentals, right? Giving God the first was my one of the core tenets about like thinking when I get paid, if everything belongs to God, I'm required as a son of God to give back, to, you know, pay my tithes, to give to the church, to commit to giving to people, to helping people in need. Like this is where this budget comes from. And I've grouped that with the emergency fund, which is just, again, I'll kind of dive into that a bit later. Now, this might shock you, right? But at home, I was putting about 65% of my income in savings and investments. Like just because I was at home, right? So I was saving for my house, I was saving for retirement, I was putting money into alternative assets, I was putting money into my wedding. Like the reason why I was able to do stuff like this was because I ain't paying no bills. Like I was lucky in the fact that my parents think didn't say, hey, like even if they did, right, like giving a couple of £100 here and there is fine because in the grand scheme of things, I'm saving so much money, right? But the point being was that there was a lot of, I guess, there was more liquid cash than I had now. So I said, I'm going to be as aggressive as I can while I'm, 21, 22, 23, living at home, just to kind of like build the position that I have. And then the last point, guys, I'm still very frugal. If you know me, I ain't like spending money. I don't like wasting money. I don't like buying things. Even I don't like turning on the heater. All right. I need to, but I don't like, hey, I don't even like turning on the heater. All right. But I had about 70% of my income on needs and wants. So direct debits, entertainment, all this stuff, right? Toyin, I know I know the heater's on downstairs, but God is good. Um, but yeah, so this is just useful, I guess, if anyone is at home. And the reason why I was so aggressive being this young was because I knew that even if I had lost money in my early 20s, it's okay for me because I'm going to learn a lot and I'm probably going to be able to make that back based on like what I've learned over the time, right? Now, how I budget as a married man with a house who just had a wedding is very different, right? Because I built up my emergency fund so much when I was at home, I didn't have to pay into an emergency fund anymore. So that percentage drastically dropped. So it was just like a giving budget, which is quite self-explanatory. When she's in a yacht and at 60, she'll be fine. Yeah, you know, yacht is, if ever yacht, it means you're in a hot country, no heat is needed, chat. But so yeah, this is my, I guess, like, sorry, not mine. This is Twine and I's budgets now. Saving and investment, we've cut down a lot on our savings and our investment. And there's a lot of context to this, but I'll kind of share once I go through this. And there's been a massive skyrocket in our needs and our wants, right? So house, leisure, direct debits, entertainment. Now, the reason why I wanted to share these two disparities, right, is because being totally real, it's actually this kind of shows that it's okay for things to change seasonally, right? So, like I said before, no budget is going to serve you the same way. My wife recently became self-employed, which I'm very excited because you know, it means that I can say that I have a wife who owns her own business, right? So what that meant was that there's been a season where my wife's been building her business and she's been growing that because there's going to be future gain. But what that means now is that there's one salary that we have to rely on. Again, guys, listen, we're all family here, right? So I want to be as transparent as possible. So we've had to make a short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. The long-term gain is, God willing, financial freedom, because one of us is now building her own business, being self-employed, being able to increase her earning capacity, whereas I'm just the guy in the 9 to 5, right? For the season now is where the income is coming from. And again, the reason for me sharing this is just to be transparent, but to be that it's okay for your budgets to change, right? But yeah, guys, this is me being transparent. Again, any questions? I'm thinking more than I like. I have a joke, right, that Tony's going to retire me, and I'm ready to just sit down and be a stay-at-home dad and just kick my feet out. But anyway, God is good. Cool. Is everyone following? Give me just like some, I don't know. I'm following emojis. I'm not good at this stuff, guys. So let me know if you're following.
Cool. Yeah, we're following. We're following.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Following, man. Transparency's been amazing, man. Thank you for being so honest with us.
No, awesome. All good. I had to get anyway. Sure. Cool. So now an example. This is, I guess, a snapshot of our budget. This is ignore the numbers, guys. I know people that have been, oh, these aren't the numbers, right? But this is just an example of like these spreadsheets that we use as a couple. And again, I'm gonna kind of go into this a bit more. But what we do ultimately is every single month, our routine is we get paid on the 31st. We sit down to run through like what we think the numbers are going to look like for the month. So we'll kind of fill in these different like buckets, these different groups, and then we'll start to like allocate the money where they're supposed to go. So first things first, we pay our tithes, we pay our giving, we have our giving budget, and then we distribute everything else, right? So most of the things that you see here are direct debits, but there are a few things that we still need to manually send over. And the reason is because when we get paid, we don't want to stress about, oh, let me do this, let me do that. If it's direct debit, it's direct debit, like it's done. But ultimately, this is kind of the order of priority that we go in, right? So it's our giving first, then it's our saving and investments, then it's our home expenses, then it's our direct debits. And then we kind of go through like our personal budgets, which being real, guys, sometimes they get cut because I'm like, hey, man, we got to invest some more. But anyway, but that's like a snapshot. Again, I'm happy to like share this later. But so what we would do is we would have a tab for every single month. So if we're in December, it'll be the December tab. If it's in January, we think you will update it, so on and so forth. The actuals is just what you actually spent in that month, and then the difference will be obviously the difference between budget and actuals. Now, we don't use these graphs, but these are graphs that we built as like, I don't know if people want to use them, because we probably will share this after, but these are graphs just to kind of visually depict like where our money actually does go every single month. So there's a couple of like pie charts, there's bar graphs, all that good stuff. And then this is like a summary of your income, your expenses, and then bucketed into each of the different pools. Again, I think it's always easier to visually learn, I think, this way versus just seeing numbers, because seeing numbers is just like, like numbers, great, fantastic. But yeah, I won't spend too much into that because I'll just share this after. But I just wanted to give you guys an insight into, I guess, like some of the spreadsheets that we use to budget.
Can I add something really quickly?
Yes, please.
So Damola did it. I don't know if you're going to mention this, so if you are, apologies. But in the budget, usually we work a month ahead. So say, for example, like in what terms what Damola was saying, like it's going to change month by month. The giving doesn't really change. Investments for the most part don't really change. But say, for example, this month or January, we had MOT was due and we had to get tires changed. So we knew that the month following, we would have to add additional money for making sure that the car was fixed in whatever way it needed to. And then like road tax was due this month or service is due next month. So every month before we do, we look at our month ahead. So if we have weddings, we put extra money towards gift giving, or you put extra money towards petrol. If you've got big drives coming up, we adjust the budget that way. And something does have to give. And like Damola said, it's most of the time it's our personal budget. But yeah, always looking a month ahead and planning backwards so that you're not shocked when you enter the month. And actually taking account of what you have planned. So that if you have a friend's birthday, reach out to that friend and ask them if they're doing something ahead of time. And don't let people spring things on you randomly, because if there's no money to do it, then, I mean, you're not going. So yeah, anyway.
No, that's so good. I think you should come up to it and just finish the session, if I'm being honest.
No, thank you. I'm okay.
No, I'm teasing you. No, yeah, that's a really good point. We do like a month ahead, which is, yeah, I completely forgot about that. So no, that's super useful. But yeah, we're gonna cover that like slightly in a bit more detail. But that makes a lot of sense. Cool. I think everyone's still tracking. I got about half an hour left, and I want to spend a lot of time on the investment section. But just really quickly before we do go into that, I think so we've looked at budgeting, we've looked at why we budget, we've looked at how we budget, different types of budgeting techniques. I think really quickly, maybe spend a couple of minutes on the savings. Now, I guess people are like saving, like what am I saving for right now? I guess it's twofold. I think the first fold, it's about like being wise about protecting ourselves if unexpected things do occur, and that's what we call an emergency fund, right? So this is, I guess, the main reason why a lot of people do save right now. All an emergency fund is it's just it's a pool of money that you have saved up somewhere in case there are any emergencies. Like it's pretty self-explanatory, right? And if we relay this back to the scriptures, right, we see in Ecclesiastes 11, which says, whoever watches the wind will not plant, whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. As you do not know the path of the wind or how the body is formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. So sow your seed in the morning, and at evening let your hands not be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. Now, I think the point here is the second line. You do not know the path of the wind or how a body is formed. Guys, we don't know what's going to happen next year. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years' time. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? Now, the point of saving for an emergency fund is just to be as prudent and as wise as possible in the wisdom that God has given us to be able to make plans. And then whatever God does it, right? Now, if you go back to Genesis, you'll see that when there was the famine, Joseph told the people to store up 20% of the produce, right? And he said, put it away, put it in the storehouse and don't touch it. And that for me is like, that was Joseph's emergency fund, or not even Joseph, that was Israel's emergency fund. The fact that they put 20% away in the years of prosperity, so that when the 7 years of famine came, they had enough to draw from, right? Now, that's the way I think about an emergency fund. It's the cash that's saved up specifically to cover unexpected bills or financial emergencies, right? So things like medical, like car problems, like redundancies were sky high back in I got made redundant. Like they were sky high a couple of years ago, and they still are sky high. Household repairs, unexpected moves, and I shouldn't laugh at this, but this one made me laugh, like pet health emergencies. Like it's not funny, right? But it's like I've just never thought about like that being an emergency because I'm very ignorant. I don't have any animals, right? But this is a real expense for a lot of people, right? Now I think again, emergency funds reduces stress and worry, right? Like if you do have one, you'll know that it's like, okay, cool. Whilst I'm not trying to predict the future, there is a level of peace that I have in knowing that I don't have to worry too much about, if my boiler breaks or if, God forbid, like something breaks at my house, right? Number two, it keeps you disciplined. Very, very important. And then number three is that it keeps the ball in your court and not somebody else's. And this is really big because let's be real, guys. If there was an emergency that we didn't have money to cover, remember what I said before. If there is a necessity, there will be a way to make it happen. And oftentimes, the way that happens is through credit cards, right? Like if there are emergencies, because credit is so easily available, it means that we can always pay for this. This breaks credit card, that breaks credit card, that breaks credit card. The problem with that is that you're putting the ball in somebody else's court and you're also paying exorbitant rates, right? Meaning that it's almost a mindset of, oh, someone else will pay for this and I'll pay it back, but it's not being as prudent as you can. Hence why we have an emergency fund. Everyone following?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. Now people ask, okay, cool, like how much should I have and how much should I save? Now this number may look scary and it's like, okay, cool, having 3 to 6 months worth of expenses if anything was to happen. Now this is probably a bit over. Some may disagree with me and say, oh no, it should be this. But I think the point is that it's better to have more and not need it than not have something and then need it. That's something my mom always tells me, right? Like it's better to overdo. And this is just ultimately like look at your current expenses now, your necessities, guys. Like Netflix isn't a necessity. Hulu and Disney Plus, like these aren't things that you need. So what you do is you take all of your necessities, rent, bills, food, transport, car insurance, and you just times that by 6 months and see what that number comes out. And that's ultimately like what a perfect emergency fund would be, right? Now, again, that's not going to be, that doesn't sound like, oh, this is a really, really easy thing to do, right? But I think if you think about it in a small by small mindset, right? If you save 25, now ignore the dollars, right? But if you save £25 over 2 years, you have about almost 3 grand, $50 every week for 2 years, almost just over 5 grand. And then $75 every week for 2 years is just under £8,000. Now, you don't have to build this immediately, but I think the point is like trying to do small by small to make sure that you start to build up that emergency fund. Hillary, go for it. I can see you want to say something.
Yeah, I'm always curious about an emergency fund because when I was at uni, it was something that people used to talk about a lot, and I did. I wonder about, I know you're going to talk about investing in a second, but is your emergency fund the kind of money that would be beneficial to think about investing, not in the sense of just like frivolously, putting it all into Apple and hoping for 10K back, but like genuinely not letting that money depreciate in your account? Does that make sense?
That's such a good question. Yeah, no. And I thought about this, and I've kind of toyed with this idea. So our investing is so our emergency fund is just in a high interest savings account, just because I definitely hear your point 100%. But I think it's what I ask myself is, if I lost this money, would I be like, could I potentially lose sleep over it? Right. And I think, yes, you could potentially make gains in the investment market, but I think for peace of mind, I like to have ours in a high interest account. But again, like each to their own. But I would recommend having, if you do put it somewhere, make sure that it's almost guaranteed to still be there. But I always recommend putting it in a savings account that gives you high interest. Yeah, this is a risk management question. Exactly. Like this is, to Iman's point, it's your risk appetite, right? Like my risk appetite for emergencies is very low because I want to be able to have money if emergencies happen. So yeah, entirely your choice, but that's what we do. Yeah, and the whole goal, exactly. Like when it comes to emergency fund, liquidity is key. Like it is, yeah, that's a perfect point. Like liquidity is so important. If you put it in a stock market, I think for ours, it takes like a couple of days to get the money out, which that might not be enough time, right? Savings account, you can't dare hold my money because you know what I'm saying? So yeah, liquidity is a really, really good point on that. Cool. Now, the last thing I want to say before jumping into investing is, I guess the second reason we save for is something called sinking funds. And I didn't hear this term until about a year or two ago, but I've got like a really short video that I guess we can watch for a couple of minutes that kind of explains it really well. But again, it's pretty self-explanatory. But I will play it now and let you guys know if you can hear the sound or not.
And helps you stay on track are sinking funds. So what a sinking fund is where you save a little bit of money every month for something specific. Okay, so maybe you're going on a vacation. You could have a sinking fund where you say, I'm going to save X amount each month towards that vacation. Maybe you're going to replace a car. You save it towards the car each month. That is what a sinking fund is. Some people, they kind of just want to have a big savings account and take the money out when they need a big expense. Or other people love sinking funds. I love a good sinking fund because I love being as detailed as possible because details, it's not my personality. I am a free spirit. So when I know I have this goal and I'm saving a little bit towards it every month, it just feels so great. So there are 4 main pros for having sinking funds. One, you know you're saving towards something fun that you want. So again, whether it's a bridesmaid's dress because you're in your friend's wedding, or it's a vacation, or it's a new car. I don't know what it is. You're redoing your kitchen. Maybe you have a kitchen remodel. It's something exciting. So the savings goal, it really gives you some motivation. Say, yes, I will put money away each month because of this fun thing that I'm going to get to experience or that I get to save for. Number 2, it helps you save for anything. Sometimes big purchases feel overwhelming. It's like, oh, wow, this is like, this big savings goal I have. You see the total and you think, oh, it's That's a lot of money. But what it does is it helps you show, yes, bite-sized pieces go a long way. So saving for anything will help with the sinking fund. Number 3, it removes the guilt.
Cool. I'll probably pause it there, just because I think everyone gets the gist, right, in terms of like what a sinking fund is.
It helps you stay on track.
Yeah, everyone gets the gist, right. So this is an example of Tyne and I's like sinking funds that we use in styling. Like we have there's rarely an expense that comes up. I've seen the questions, by the way. I'm going to quickly answer these and I'll get there. But there's rarely an expense that comes up that we don't already have an allocated pot for. So we know that there's about 4 or 5 weddings this year. So we've already started putting money towards those for Ashobi and, whatever, right? Groceries, car expenses, our MOT was due this month, but we already planned for that last month. So it wasn't like, oh, MOT is due, snap, we need to find the money. Or road tax, sorry, I mean, like things like givings, date nights, like everything has, I think there's probably like 8 or 9 in our styling account, which we just put money into every single month and just builds it up slowly over time so that we don't have to like be scrambling about when that time comes. If that makes sense. And yeah, so yeah, I guess, yeah, Mo, to your point, yeah, they're different things. Emergency funds are like, this is only for emergencies, like a roof does this or boiler breaks or this happens. But sinking funds are like the pots that you use to kind of like build the things that you need to save for, I guess. Yeah, ultimately. Cool. Makes sense. Sweet. I have about 20 minutes left, so I'm going to spend the rest of the time on investing, which I'm sure people want to hear about, right? Now, again, this is, I guess, the definition of investing that we used last week, right? Buying an asset, hoping that it would generate future cash flow or appreciate in value in the future, right? So we looked at things like compound interest. The principle of your investment building over time because of compound, right? We saw Warren Buffett say that majority of his wealth has come from, he makes a joke saying living in America, some lucky genes, but what he actually means is that it's come from compound interest, right? Now, all compound interest is it's when your investment grows at a faster rate over time because you earn interest on 2 things. You earn interest on your initial investment, but you also earn interest on the interest that you've received. So it's not just on your principal, which is the amount that you put in, but it's on your accumulated interest, right? So essentially you're earning interest on the interest, like I said. Now it works, and this is a really key thing, right? Where a lot of people, when they invest money and then they take out the profits that they make because, oh, they're seeing that they made 20%, 30%, they want to take it out, spend it. The key to compound interest is to reinvest, what Emmanuel said, is to reinvest the interest that you've made. So if you've put in £100 and you've got out and you've made £110, don't take that £10 out, leave the £10 in there. Because what happens is you start to accumulate interest over time, ultimately is the principle of compound interest. And you kind of see the benefits of not taking money out. You can see the delta between if you invested at 10% for 20 years, where compound interest will take you, and then where simple interest, which is where you take out the profits, will take you. And then principal is just the amount that you put in. All right. Yeah. Moffat, Ethereum, Sha. It's not too long. Anyway, the second principle is dollar cost averaging, which is ultimately just where you invest a fixed amount on a regular basis, regardless of like the share price that you're paying. So for Tyne and I, what this means is that every single month, a certain percentage of our income gets taken out automatically for investments. Like we don't have to do anything. It just gets taken out regardless of what that share price is, right? Now, this is the goal, right? And now this is an example of one of the ETFs that Tyne and I own. And the green parts are the points that we invested at over the last X years. And what you can see is that this is just dollar cost averaging at work. Like we're investing, whether it's high, whether it's low, whether it's flat, like we're just always investing because it's just the principle of investing, of just staying in the market every time and allowing compound interest to work for you, right? This is a really good graph. And people always say, oh, like, I want to time the market and I want to invest when it's really low and then sell when it's really high and da, 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 da. But what this graph shows you, right, is so this $65,000 is if you invested 10K in the S&P 500. If you missed only 10 of the best trading days between this 19-year period, what your investment would do is it would have halved to 30K, right? You can't buy the dip, guys. Like, this is 10 days out of 19 years. If you missed those 10 days, your investments would have halved. Now, if you go all the way to the right, if you missed the best 60 days, you lose money. You actually, like, guys, let this sink in. Like, you lose money if you try to time the market ultimately. Now, this is why it's so important. Every single month, if you can, I'll kind of show you how, but you set up a rule that just takes out money every single month and invest it into funds that you want to invest in ultimately. So those are the two main principles that I guess it's really important to know. Compound interest and dollar cost averaging. Cool. So looking at the different types of investments now, what about investing your ISA or pension? It's a good question. I'll come on to that, but it's a really good question. What about tax investing? We'll do these at the end because I think these are really good questions, but I want to try and whiz through each of these here. But ultimately, guys, there are a bunch of different investments that you can make. I don't know why my mouse isn't working. Sorry guys, my mouse isn't working. Cool. Yeah, there are a bunch of different investments that you can make, right? There's emergency fund, we've spoken about that. That's a type of investment. Like clearing high interest debt is a type of investment. Stock market, which is the one that we'll look at a bit more. Alternative investments, like I was in crypto, I was in NFTs, like those kind of like more lucrative but high risk investments. Even things like insurances, guys. Like we have insurance for almost everything that happens in this house. There's nothing that is like most things can't catch us up, it catches us off guard because we have insurance for almost everything, right? And again, that's for us a type of investment. And then things like someone just mentioned, pensions, mortgage overpayment, even paying into an ISA for your children called a JISA, like side hustles, like these are all investments that you can make. But for the sake of this session, I'm just going to kind of look at the stock market for now, and then we can kind of touch on these maybe a bit later. But when it comes to the stock market, I guess three main things to look at. There's stocks, which is your equities, right? So what this means is that you buy a stock in Apple, which means that you now own a part of that company, right? So when they do well, you do well, right? So yeah, when you buy, you become a shareholder ultimately. Bonds is pretty much like an IOU. Now an IOU just means that when you buy a government bond or you buy a corporate bond, what you're doing is you're giving the money or the government a certain amount of money in return for generating X% over the next 5 or 10 years, right? That's their guarantee. That's what a bond is. And the last one, like the commodities, things like gold and silver, they just are what they are, right? And these can typically be really great investments because they are quite safe instruments in times of turmoil. So if you look at this graph, right, this graph shows you all of the different asset classes and how they performed over time over the last 30, 40 years. And if you look at this dip here, this was the financial crisis in 08. Purple line is US REITs, which is real estate investment trusts. Ignore that, it's just a type of investment. The yellow line is US stocks. The red line is non-US stocks. And you can see everything fell. But if you look at the yellow line, gold actually rose during that time. So what someone would normally do in their portfolio is they would have stocks, they'd have bonds, they'd have commodities, because the commodities normally hedge against any bad performing stocks or bonds, if that makes sense. This should be a really clear graph. But let me know if it doesn't make sense. I hope it does. Yes, no, maybe. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna take that as a yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can. It makes sense.
Perfect, cool. So someone might ask, okay, cool. So there's stocks, simple to understand, bonds, simple to understand, commodities make sense. there are so many stocks, like which ones do I invest in? And this was to who was it? Was it Leke? Someone in their small group spoke about they wanted to start investing in stocks more and like specific stocks and these kind of things, right? Now, I always had this question, especially when I started investing. Like, there are thousands of stocks, thousands. Like, which one do I choose? Now, the good thing is that you actually don't have the answer to that question, because there's a very amazing thing called exchange traded funds, ETFs, or index funds, right? And all an ETF is it's a basket of stocks that is bundled into one fund that can be bought and sold on the market, right? So imagine you didn't know whether to invest in Facebook or Google or Microsoft or Amazon or Alibaba or eBay or all these things. What an ETF is it's a collection of all of these stocks into one basket. So instead of you having to buy these individual stocks, you can just buy that basket, which gives you exposure into each of these different stocks and shares, right? So again, it's just a basket of stocks that you guys can buy. Now, I think Emily Rose said it, like, diversification is actually key, because instead of you buying one and then Apple goes bust, it probably won't, but you would have lost your whole portfolio. But it's unlikely that Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon are all going to go bust, right? And so the point of ETFs is that it spreads your risk across a bunch of different investments, right? Now, these are just like examples, because some people, they think about ETFs and it's like, oh, like, I don't actually know what they look like. You can have ETFs in stocks, you can have ETFs in bonds, and you can have ETFs in the commodities. Examples like the Vanguard S&P 500. All this means is that the S&P 500 just tracks the 500 largest companies in the United States, which sounds like a pretty good fund to be in, right? Again, this is not financial advice. I'm not getting sued, guys, all right? But this is an example of an ETF that a lot of people buy. The FTSE 100 is an index that tracks the 100 largest companies in the United Kingdom. So these are just examples, I guess, of just to give you guys like visual depictions of like what they look like. And the beauty is that you can have stock ETFs in your portfolio, you can have bond ETFs in your portfolio, and you can have commodities ETFs. So you are really, really like leveraged across each of these asset classes. Now, you guys know I like Warren Buffett, and he made this quote, right? And again, this is not my words, it's his words. He said his advice. So this is his letter to the shareholders 10 years ago. He basically said, put 10% of the cash that you have in short-term government bonds and 90% in a very low-cost S&P 500 index funds. I believe the trust's long-term results from this policy will be superior to those attained by most investors, whether pension funds, institutions, or individuals. Warren Buffett is basically giving most people the key to how to become wealthy in the long term. He basically said, put majority of your money in a stock ETF, and he said, put some of it in a bond ETF so that you hedge against it. I personally don't do this because I think this is a bit too aggressive for me, but the principle being that index funds are the way a lot of people are starting to build wealth, and the way a lot of people have built wealth over the last 20, 30, 40 years, right? Do the research, guys. You will see how many wealthy people have put their money in index funds or ETFs. They're the same thing, kind of, just interchangeably. So I guess questions, we've kind of looked at like why to invest. Diversified, is automated, and it's really cheap. If we now look at what the ETFs have returned over the last 30 years, guys, the S&P 500 has returned about 10% every single year on average for 30 years. This means that it withstood the dot-com bubble in 2002, it withstood the financial crisis in 2008, it withstood COVID in 2020, and it still generated 10% every single year, average. The point being, guys, you ain't getting 10% anywhere else. Your bank ain't giving you 10%. Your bank is not giving you 10%. And if you think back to the example that we gave last week of the 3 different buckets of how much you put into each one, I only used the 8% interest rate. I didn't even use the 10%. I use the 8%. Right. So the point being, guys, is that, and please, guys, permit me, I'm gonna try and finish at 9:25, please, because I really do want to like try and cover everything on the stocks front. Hillary, yes, you get like compound interest applies to every investment class. It's just the principle of keeping your profits reinvested and not taking them out. So it applies to every single investment class, not just ETFs, like everything. But ETFs are just really good for these reasons. It diversifies against industries, locations, it's automated. Like, guys, we need to like not be physically doing stuff like, oh, I need to invest this month. Oh, I forgot to invest. If it's automated, you can't forget. You can't forget, right? So that's why things like this are great, right? This is a screenshot. Also, big plug. This website is called Portfolio Visualizer. I will put it in the chat now. And ultimately what it does is it will backdate any portfolio that you want to see how it's performed over the last 20, 30 years. Just so that you know in your mind that what I am doing is a tried and proven strategy. And it's not that, oh, I'm going to put money in this penny stock that's been around for 2 minutes. It doesn't even make sense. But what this graph shows is just a portfolio type over the last 20 years. And you can see that this portfolio, which is called Ray Dalio's all-weather portfolio, I will put it in the chat. Ray Dalio is a phenomenal investor. He is the founder of the world's largest hedge fund. And this is the portfolio that we follow. It's called an all-weather portfolio because it's pretty much performed really well over each of the different economic downturns, right? Next example is, this one is a portfolio of the total US stock market. You can see the difference, right? This one is a lot more aggressive. Ray Dalio's is less aggressive. Now, the reason it's less aggressive is because if you look up here, in the worst year, it lost 18% in one single year, right? Ray Dalio's all weather. But if you look at the total US stock market, its worst year was 37%. What this means is that Ray Dalio's portfolio consisted of stocks, bonds, commodities, gold, a bunch of things, whereas the total US stock market was only stocks. So you will make a lot more money just being invested in stocks, but the risk is a lot higher, as you can see. Does that make sense? You will probably make more just having stocks heavy, but I don't recommend that because you're not diversified. And if another financial crisis came, a lot of people will be like, snap, I need to take my money out, let me sell. And you would have lost all those gains, right? But the point being is this hopefully is an encouragement to everyone that it's possible and it's tried and proven and it's shown over the last 30 years that, again, they always say historicals don't predict the future. That's like, it's correct, it's true, but it's also the principle of something's been happening over time and it's probably a good idea. It's never too late, right? Because the stock market is the stock market, right? I hope that makes sense, guys, so far.
Yeah.
Cool. Perfect.
Yeah, you might have to do a whole session on investing, mate.
Oh yeah, no, listen, I can talk for ages, right? This is, guys, like, this is just ETFs, but and there's so many types. There's crypto, there's NFTs, there's options, there's futures, there's so many things, right? But I think this is the fundamental for every investor. Like ETF investing, everyone will tell you, Ray Dalio, Tony Robbins, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, like any famous investor will tell you ETFs are the way that they've built their wealth, right? Now, you're probably asking, okay, cool, this is great, like, cool story, where do I sign up, right? These are three platforms that I recommend. Vanguard, Free Trading, Trading 212. For me, Vanguard is miles above the rest, like personally. Vanguard is miles above the rest. Not only because it's just a really easy user interface, but even the founder, Jack Bogle, if you watch interviews of him, like, he just seems like a very, very sound guy. And it's like, oh, I want to put my money here, right? Low fees. It has most of the ETFs that you want, the S&P 500, the FTSE, the developed world, the bonds, like, it has most of them available. Free Trade, I used to use for my individual stocks, just because Vanguard is only ETFs and index funds. It doesn't have individual stocks. Free Trade I use for individual stocks. So I use both of them. And then Trading 212 I think I used to use it just to try it out for a bit, but I just fizzled out. But if there's anything I would recommend, is starting with Vanguard, like 100%. And just like a really quick, I'm even happy just to, because I wanted to quickly go on Vanguard. And while I do, to Emmanuel's question, interactive investor, I actually haven't used it, bro. I've heard about it, but I haven't used it. So I'd be keen to know if anyone has. I think if I'm going to be building my wealth, I'd like to put it in a fund that I know is hopefully going to be around in the next like 30, 40 years. Sorry, I'm not going to log in. So this is Vanguard's point. Yeah, Bim just said she's not a massive fan. But ultimately, I think where I would start is, of course, like, again, do your own research, right? But when you do open an account, these options will appear. So personal pension, stocks and shares, general account, or junior ISA. I always recommend opening a stocks and shares ISA, but there's caveats to this. The caveat is if you paid into another stocks and shares ISA in the current tax year, you will not be able to, or you will be able to open it, but it's illegal. You can only pay into one type of stocks and shares ISA in the tax year. So if you do have one already, you can just transfer it over to Vanguard. And if you haven't invested in it, then this is great for you to open. But ISAs are always the best place because it's tax-free returns, right? So any money you make, government can't take it, it's yours. But I'm sure soon they might find a way. But yeah, they can't take it. And then the second thing I wanted to show is if you go to what we offer here and you go to the ETF section, you will pretty much find everything that I've been speaking about, hence why I think it was really useful for me to do this run through, right? So you will find, let me move this screen. Where is it? So these are, you can filter by bonds, equities, like I said, these two. If you filter on equities, you will find things like the FTSE 100, which is what I spoke about. You'll find the FTSE 250, which is the largest 250 companies, and you'll find the famous S&P 500 here, right? If you click onto full fund details, guys, it literally tells you everything about what you're investing in. And this is why there isn't an excuse now for saying, oh, I don't understand. This website is so simple. If you go on if you go on portfolio data, it will tell you how many stocks are in that ETF. Guys, it will even tell you what stocks are in that ETF. So it says that Microsoft, 7% of this is made up, Apple, Nvidia, Amazon, Facebook, Alphabet, Berkshire Hathaway. Like, it will give you everything you need to know about the ETFs that you're investing in. And I think when you looked at this, it gives me a lot of comfort knowing that like this is actually real. It shows you, your diversification across industries. Of course, S&P is just US only, so it's just 100%. Hillary, that's a fantastic question. Ethics, because I was convicted by this 100%. I was convicted by this in terms of I didn't want. It's funny you mentioned that. I didn't want to put money into companies that I didn't align with the principles, and particularly for me being transparent, that was like gambling, tobacco, and like weaponry and stuff. So I recently kind of changed what I invest in now. So I invest in an equivalent of the S&P 500, but not the S&P 500 specifically. The one that I invest in is called, no, where is it? It's somewhere, but I think it's something like this. It's like ESG Global All Cap or something like that. And the reason I do that is because it filters out those tobacco companies. It filters out, where is it? You'll see. Yeah, it takes out adult entertainment, alcohol, gambling, tobacco, cannabis, all that good stuff. And again, people have different opinions, like people have different convictions, and I think it's all based on your own convictions. But this is something that I was kind of convicted about like recently, hence why I changed it. It's pretty much the same fund, just without those like companies like that. So I don't want to fund it. Hi, Hillary, you are funny. But guys, I'm conscious that it's 9:25 and I wanted to leave a bit of time for like any questions, like maybe 5-10 minutes. Just definitely being nice. Hey man, listen, bruh. I wanted to we should all do the same. Oh, okay, fair. I mean, hey man, you said it, not me. But I wanted to leave like 5 or 10 minutes if anyone had like any questions, if it made sense, if you had any comments. I feel like I've just rambled on for like the last 40 minutes, 50 minutes. But
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but if he has more information, I want to hear more information, Sharp. But if you don't have questions, please raise your hand now. So if not, I want to hear more.
Someone had a tax question, sorry. That's
Emma.
true. Anything back in the chat. If you can like repost the question you had, that might be.
I can quickly say it.
Go on.
Does investing impact your tax bracket? So say, for example, if you were earning the 20% tax bracket, but in your investment portfolio means that you're now earning like 51K plus, can the government tax you on your investment profits because you're earning more?
Not if you put it in an ISA. No. So if you put it in an ISA, the government can't take the money, regardless of how much you earn. And even if it's not in an ISA, investments aren't taxed in the same way. So investments will be taxed through something called capital gains tax. So capital gains I don't think capital gains is based on your income. Capital gains is an amount that you can make, and then the government start taxing you ahead. But short answer, put it in an ISA, they can't take it. Cool.
Damola, I had a question. Thank you so much for today. It's been really informative. Thank you for breaking down and being so transparent, with what you and your wife do, and that's been really helpful for me. My question was, when you talked about that you've mentioned so far in terms of the investing part, and coupled with your budgeting, that you budget for your emergency fund, your sinking fund, and then also investing, which you're doing based on like dollar cost averaging, regular amounts. You didn't mention how frequently are you automatically I'm assuming you mean like you do a direct debit on a regular basis to your ETF fund. What's the frequency of that? Is that monthly, weekly? And also, is that, I know today's session was on saving, budgeting, investing, but is that your main or only investment is the ETFs, or is it that you're kind of not talking about the other ones that you use, or is that there are loads of investment vehicle like models, but you're just teaching us one? Like, I just kind of wanted to get an idea of not necessarily what you're recommending, but in the sense of, is that at the moment you're saying that you currently are mainly investing using the ETF on a regular basis, or are there other things that we should be aware of to consider? Like, what is the order of what you would be investing in, basically? You don't need to make it personal to you, but do you know what I mean? Like, either that once we get to a certain stage in ETS, then you're going to be now looking at property investment, or are you currently concurrently doing like you mentioned cryptocurrency? Are you doing that at the same time? That's kind of just to get a kind of idea, but you don't have to go personal. It's just
No, it's a good question. I just laughed at Iman's comment. No, so I think the first question was, how often do we invest? So we do it monthly. So every time we get paid, the day after or so, it just takes the money out to put in these, to put into the ETFs, and that for us is like our pension fund. So it's like, that's when like we try not to touch that money. That's like our, over 20, 30 years ultimately. And the second question is, so ETFs is one of them. I think I just started here because this is like the main like core, I think, principle, or the core like foundation for investing. But again, I used to invest in crypto. I'm probably going to restart again, but do the same principle of dollar cost averaging. But even beyond that, like there's things that, like a friend of ours, they invest in like coffee transportation, which we put some money into. So there's a bunch of things, but this is like majority of where our investments go. But there's still a bunch of like other things here and there, I guess. That makes sense.
Thank you.
But yeah, we can see if we can do like another part, because this guy, there's so much, man. There's so much. As you can tell, like I'm getting ginger by this.
Honestly, guys, are there any more questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of weird to know what your thoughts are when it comes to individual stocks and picking. I feel I'm more in line with like your view when it comes to the index funds in terms of the safety and risk appetite. But I think sometimes I do wonder whether there's, I guess, what's the word? There's almost like missing out in a way when it comes to not individually picking stocks or individually researching in terms of being able to further grow a portfolio. But what are your thoughts when it comes to, I guess, balancing that? Like, if you do balance it, what is like the ratio of how much you invest through funds in comparison to potentially individually picked stocks or cryptocurrency or other like assets?
No, I think it's also something I've been thinking about because I used to do it a lot, but I don't do it anymore now. But I 100% agree. Like, I do think that a portfolio should probably be majority of ETFs, but then have like big bets for like individual companies. Because that's even that's how Warren Buffett started, right? He started by like, what do they call it? Value investing. We're finding like really cheap companies that are doing really well and just putting money into those. But I just haven't spent time doing it, if I'm being honest. Like, I do want to do it, but I just haven't like done it. But yeah, no, I do recommend that actually. But that's like further down the line if this is like your first like entry into investing, if that makes sense. Like, but yeah, I do think you should, especially if you've been investing for a while. I think it might be a good idea to start to look into that.
Damola, quickly, can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, bro, I got you.
How it sounds like it might be a redundant question for those who've been investing for a while, but for everyone who's just starting or meaning to start, how often should they check their investments or check the scope of what's happening?
Don't check it.
Don't check it.
And I say that, right, because I say that there are reasons, obviously, why we check ours, right? If it's like we want to like put money in or whatever. But for the most part, we actually, and Toyin, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part, we don't actually check our portfolio. Because what happens, right? You saw the graph over time, it's sorry. Over time, it's like on an upwards trend. The problem with checking it is, guys, if you were invested during COVID, you would have probably taken your money out because COVID hit people's portfolios. But the portfolio is now doing a lot better. So I think checking it is almost like a discipline thing for, if you know that you won't sell and take it out, check it if you want, chat. But I don't see the need to, because you're not going to take it out, hopefully. And that's why dollar cost averaging, thinking whether it's high, low, good, bad, ugly, rain, shine, invest what you're, Toyin said it doesn't actually exist. So realistically, maybe not even yearly, maybe like quarterly, maybe, or like, and again, maybe I'm being nosy, right? But yeah, I don't see the reason why you would need to check it often.
Okay, so to make it a bit more specific, you said obviously you love Warren Buffett. I know he has like a kind of AGM meeting at every year, so to speak. What resources, because you obviously posted resources in the last video, and bro, like the Miles Monroe one, as
Crazy,
well as
right?
the Bill Johnson, crazy. So what resources would you give that you rely on for investing?
No, it's a good question. I don't use as many now. There are just like people I like to listen to when it comes to investing, or I did very early on. One of them is Tony Robbins. He has like an hour YouTube video about everything I've said, and that's what fundamentally changed the game for me. I will find it, but I'll write it down now. Tony Robbins is one of them. And honestly, guys, like, it's more so just like listening to people, like interviews of like really famous investors. So Tony Robbins is one. Ray Dalio is a big person that I listen to. Oh, new book, interesting. But yeah, Ray Dalio and Tony Robbins were like the big like pioneers. And Jack Bogle, those three are pretty much like three main OGs, I guess, for this stuff. Cool. Someone had a question about, have you had experience in investing in land? Speaking of, not yet. I haven't. No. But this would be, again, yeah, this would be one. It's just in the UK, Sha. Land is. But I think, again, anything, like, I would never say never, like 100%, because I think the point is to be as diverse as possible. But no, I haven't had any direct experience in land investing yet. To Bore.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Wait, firstly, Toyin said you have a secret book, so please drop it. We need all the knowledge.
Yeah, actually.
But also, I always get I understand ETFs well, but when it comes to mutual funds, I get muddled up in the types of what it is and how to actually think about it. And also with so Dave Ramsey is someone that I listen to a lot, and obviously he's got his Baby Steps Millionaire program, which seems to work for literally millions of people at different stages of their life. Like, what would you say? Yeah, what do you think about his approach?
Yeah, no, I think it's a quick one on the sorry, baby steps to, I know it's because I've seen it because someone loves Dave Ramsey. But on the first question, so the difference between index funds or ETFs and mutual funds is ETFs are what we call passively managed, meaning that it just tracks like the index. So it will track the S&P 500 and only that index. But a mutual fund, what would happen is there would be someone sitting in Canary Wharf maybe who would be moving specific companies in and out of like index funds. So if they see that, oh, this company is not doing well, they'll pick another company and replace it. So theirs is actively managed. Now, that may sound better, but actually they're so expensive. And because they're so expensive over time, it reduces the profit that you make. That's why if you listen to who is it? I think Warren Buffett says he says mutual funds are just high fee people. Hence why he always says index funds. If that answers the first question. I think the second question on the baby steps, and just so people are not aware, Dave Ramsey, these are the ones. I agree with number one, saving £1,000, 100%. 3 to 6 expenses, I also agree with that. Investing in retirement, I agree with that. Saving in children's college fund, agree with that. Paying off your home early and paying off all debt, I'm a bit like, not sure fully, but majority of them I do agree with. But yeah, if anyone wants to check this out, it's just Dave Ramsey, 7 Baby Steps.
Thank you.
So I put eyes because she knows how. Ah, cool. I hope that's useful, guys. I don't know if there's anything else. And
I think someone else had a question on pensions, opting out of pensions, staying in pensions, and I'm sure a lot of people probably have that dilemma. So yeah, I just wanted to bring it back.
oh, I love that question. I love that question. Opting out. So being transparent, I currently do not pay into my company pension. Now, I don't recommend that. Not saying I don't recommend that. The only reason I don't pay into it right now is because the match that my company give me is like they want me to put more in it and they don't match the amount that I put in. So I'm just like, I'm not gonna, like, I don't put into that specifically. What I do is we've recently opened up a SIP, a self-invested personal pension, where we just have our own pension, and our Vanguard we kind of use as our pension fund anyway. So again, in an ideal world, I would still pay into my company pension because that's another form of like investment or security. But right now, I'm not at this company just because of the matching that they do. But yeah, it's a risky one to not pay into your company pension. Put it that way, just because it requires knowing exactly like why and what you're doing. But for security, a lot of people do, but just, yeah, that's where we currently stand like right now. In addition to that, sorry.
I heard regarding the pension, that if you leave the company, the pension disappears.
No.
So like this. So this is what I've heard, because obviously I've recently been looking into pensions and stuff like that for like parents and all that stuff. So, yeah, I don't know whether that is
No, you take your pension with you, like it follows you. So that's your pension. Yeah, there are pension like consolidation sites that consolidate. I have a pension in Ireland, for goodness sake. I don't even know where it is, but it's there somewhere. From when I was working there. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a good point. I need to go find that one.
Any more questions, guys?
Just a quick question about what you just mentioned. So the SIP, is that you know how you showed on the Vanguard website different categories when you're signing up? So does that mean that when you're signing up, you may have this year signed up with one investment ISA, and then you then open the pension one in addition? Is that what you mean within your account?
Yeah, so we have the ISR and then we have the SIP. We haven't really paid into the SIP just because there's only been one that we've been recently thinking about paying into. But yeah, we have both of them, but we just don't really use the SIP right now, but we probably will very soon.
Yeah, because there was a recent thing on the news as well about the pension age and whether we'll still have to be working until we're 71, that kind of
How,
thing.
how can I
And
be working when I'm 71?
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, and this is the thing, yeah, like, yeah, 71 is wild. So guys, I love like all this stuff, but there's so many nuances about like pensions and why SIPs are different and why pensions are different, and most of the UK is Babylon. Oh man, yeah. So I think just in summary, the point being is that I don't want to have all my eggs in one basket where all of it's in my pension. I want to have some in my company pension, some in my SIP, some in my ISA, some in cash, some in crypto, some in real estate, some in land, because that way the government can't do all of them. Maybe one or two, but I will still have a bunch of different. So that's honestly the goal, right? Having so many different classes where it's like, it doesn't really matter what happens because I'm spread across each of them. I'm gonna move to Ghana. Hey man, Josh and Emily, right, take me with you. Maybe not Ghana, but I'll go to Nigeria. But maybe Nigeria is even worse. I don't know. But
Nigeria is crazy right now. That
exactly.
$1, mate. I'm just first. No, this has been really good, guys. Any more questions? Me, I can't lie. I think Damola may have to do a session just on investing alone. 'Cause I feel like there's a lot of gems here, just on the practical side of things to just kind of like, because look, even though I'm your pastor, whatever, and I know Damola has caveat the whole session saying this is not financial advice. Please, you'd be very silly to not consider doing not one thing you said tonight. You'd be very silly. That's what I'll tell you anyway. So I think I think it's really key for us to talk about more in depth about this, Damola. I think it's going to help people really get practical in what it means to build wealth. Because the reality is, you're not going to build wealth from your salary. You're going to have to touch on. You can't. Okay, guys, 9 to 5 is not going to build your future. You're going to have to learn how to make money when you sleep and make your money, make money, make money. Hallelujah. Amen. So I'm just really encouraging you guys. Obviously, not telling you what to do, but you'd be a big fool to not even just do £5 or something you said tonight and just test it out and just over time build your knowledge, build your risk management and just actually look into improving your financial IQ and your financial freedom future as well. But I think Emma's got a question and I'm going to round up. Go ahead, Emma.
I'm so sorry for all my questions. It's so good. I just want to thank you guys. And just and thank you for making like a safe environment where I don't feel silly. But the kind of elephant in the room is not having necessarily the disposable income to do, like, it sounds great. What advice would you give for that? It might be straightforward, but I'm just wondering, what advice would you give if it feels like there's not much disposable income to do some of the things you talked about in today's session? Because even saving, you talked about 21% of the population save, and there's probably many valid reasons apart from ignorance why people don't, let alone the investing side, So what would you recommend or suggest? Not necessarily recommend because you're not giving financial advice, but like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's I think it's a really good question. And I think this is why I think I try to be as transparent as possible, because there will be seasons that like guys, life happens, right? So I feel like there will be some times where you can't do this. But I think that the key is like, even if it's just a tiny amount, not because materially it will have a massive impact, but just so that you can start getting into the frame of mind of like, oh, this investing thing, like, guys, even if you put in £5 a month, like just to start off, like getting your mind to think, and then God's grace, but like as you continue to grow, like you kind of build that muscle of like how much you do put in, right? Really quickly, I want to share this thing. So there was this story about this guy in America called Theodore Johnson, who was a UPS worker, right? Now, his annual salary, it says here, was about $14,000, right? But what he did was every single month, he told his employer, take 20% of my income away and put it into your company stock. This man gave 70 million, I think, was his net worth. This is someone who had $14,000 a year salary, which is about what, £10,000 now, right? Every single, that's like, so I think the principle is, it doesn't actually yes, the amount matters, kind of, not really, but it's the principle of if I start now, even in 5 years' time, I'll have the mindset to keep doing this when I have more money, when I have more disposable income. So I think it's just about starting now and just like not being afraid, I think, if that makes sense, if that's helpful.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Powerful. Any more questions, guys?
Can I just quickly add something? For those that, I guess, especially if you don't have a lot of disposable income or there's other responsibilities, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this. So Damola obviously taught me about, look at Damola's face, he doesn't know I'm about to say, don't worry. My dad didn't know about investing. And once he heard Damola speaking about it more, prior to us getting married, and also he saw me investing a little bit more, he just basically gave himself a challenge to do, I think it was like 15, 20 pounds a month. And he didn't even expect anything to happen. And I think over like a few years, and this was through COVID, so the interest was a lot higher, but I think he was making like 13, 14% on what he was investing. But it was just a test because no one ever taught my dad about investing. He very much is just like pensioner, mind his business and save his money. But even just the small he done, like £15 here, and he kept it up every month. He would call me every month and be like, Toyin, it's growing this amount, it's growing that amount. So you'll be surprised what a small amount of money can do, and just testing it. And also the more you see it working, the more likely you are to move things around and I guess invest more into things that are working. So yeah.
Hey, wow. Professor, I tell you, want to come to the next week's session, yeah?
No, Damola's got it. Damola's got it.
That is so cool. That is so key because you literally just echoed what I was going to echo, man. Guys, start small. You know what I mean? The goal is to start, you know, and if we're all really, really honest, that's the main barrier here, rather than, oh, I don't have £200 or whatever. Your confidence in this thing it's gonna be built from you seeing that it works, which just means you just start doing something. So even if it's £5, £10, like PS will tell you, you know what I'm saying? Any little £5, £10, so just dashing that into the free trade, whatever's working, add more, let it grow, you know what I'm saying, kind of thing. So, but Damola, thank you so much. Today was really good. I mean, I've got Vanguard now, so I'm just going to spend tonight looking at what ETF I'm going to buy.